Frank Pereira. COVID-19 is rapidly changing the world. As the virus spreads across the globe, most countries are choosing the strongest form of social distancing. As a result, entire sectors of the economy are shuttered or forced to operate at a fraction of their normal capacity. Demand for goods and services is drastically reduced due to lost income and uncertainty about the future. Restrictions on international travel and increased border controls have raised international trade costs and prevented tradable services from being supplied or consumed. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the road ahead for trade and commerce. Joining me on the program today are Anil Trigunayath, former ambassador, Charan Singh, Chief Executive, eGrow Foundation, and Naresh Bothra, CEO, Bothra International. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Professor, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's first try and understand and try and analyze the kind of impact or how COVID-19 has affected global trade.
Yes, I think you've chosen a very good topic, and it's a very timely topic. We are on the verge of opening up. The world has had their lockdown for 6 to 8 weeks to 10 weeks, and now almost everybody is going to open up. And therefore, this issue is going to become very important about the borders and the trade. A couple of things which I would like to observe right at the beginning. As you would have noticed, and in one of your earlier programs you had mentioned, the world has started thinking of moving out of China, and therefore China was the global industrial hub. And now the world is thinking, and you remember Japan has set up a fund telling its companies if it wants to move out, it's ready to fund it. And other countries are also jumping into the fray. Most of the countries are attracting those companies which are trying to move out. India is one of them, but Vietnam, Estonia, Mexico, Bangladesh are also in the race. So there is going to be a change in the pattern of trade. That is the first thing. Many more countries are going to emerge and are going to pitch in for the companies to come there, and the monopoly power that China had is probably going to shift out. That's the first thing that's going to happen. The second thing, which has happened during this COVID period, the oil prices have crashed dramatically. And therefore, you're going to find that the shipping cost is going to also change. So therefore, distances are going to become closer. Cost as a distance is not going to play a role. So moving goods from one place to the other is going to become cheaper, and therefore trade movement would again become very different. Now coming to the substance. The issue is that if trade is going to change, what are the commodities in which the trade is going to change? As you rightly said, the globalization is on a sunset. Protectionism is starting to pick up, and countries are very worried of putting things or investment outside their borders which they can control. Therefore, according to me, the protectionism movement is going to become stronger. Every country is going to put in as much as possible supply chain within their own countries. So trade within the countries will increase, but trade across the countries may not suddenly start after the lockdown is over. I have also heard and read when countries are being funded to move out of China, there are chances that most of the movement will take from China to the country's geographical land itself. Some of it will move to a new alternative destination. So countries have also started thinking of having major supply lines within their economies. So please expect that the trade volumes will go down despite the oil prices coming down. The last point I want to make is the air travel is going to suffer tremendously. Of course, airlines have been offering that they would have the middle seat or the middle row, and they'll be very careful with the social distancing. But as humans, there's always a scare of traveling at different airports, different airlines, different environment. So with the physical travel coming down, you can also expect that the trade volumes will come down. So I'm expecting a new world where protectionism will be on the rise and intercontinental and multinational trade will be on the decline.
Okay, all right. So, Naresh Bothra, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. From an industry point of view, when we are looking at a whole new scenario, a whole new world, like Professor Charan Singh just pointed out, is Indian industry really ready for such kind of a scenario? And secondly, what measures do you think that have to be taken so that we can boost trade?
Indian industry will certainly be impacted at the same time as the entire global industry will be impacted. Again, it will vary from industry to industry. The major industries which are going to be very badly hit: airlines, travel, entertainment, tourism, then logistics, automobile, retail, banking, financial services, they are going to be badly hit, but pharmaceuticals, they will grow. Food and essentials, they will be better off. Education hopefully will continue a similar way, but the patterns will change. The pattern of education and the new formats of education will peep in, and that will be much better. Telecom and internet industry, that will grow. So it will vary from industry to industry. Exports will be one of the major hit industries, and myself being from handicrafts and furniture exports, this is one of the very badly hit industry. The reason being our major markets have been America, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, UK, and they are the worst impacted countries. So for my industry, this is the worst time. I think even if things settle down, it will take at least 2 years to resume back to a normalcy. Normalcy, which I say is like 70% or 75% of what we left in March. So that is how it is going to be. When we start after the COVID is over, probably will start at 20 or 25%. This will create a lot of unemployment, since my industry all over India gives employment to almost 7 million people. Being in Jodhpur itself, it is more than 1.75 lakh people who are employed directly and indirectly to this industry. So unemployment will be on the rise. A lot of people who have migrated from states to states and they are looking forward to go back to their home states, they will not be returning for a long time. So the production and manufacturing capabilities will also be impacted, and the same scenario will impact all global communities as well at the same time. Coming to the movement of hatred against China and companies shifting to other nations, India certainly will get its share of benefit, but again, there are many better countries which are likely to do better. With KPMG and other companies, I have read a lot about different surveys. Vietnam is one of the biggest countries, especially in my sector. They've always won the game, and in the forthcoming months and couple of years, they will be the biggest winner. Since they are close to China, their working pattern are very much similar. There's a lot of clarity and transparency when companies want to go in there. India has had its own problems, but since a big manufacturing hub, and they have a soft corner for India, so that's why India will win, but it would be a share only, not a big one.
Okay, all right, Ambassador, let me bring you to the picture now. So you heard both the other panelists out. Let's talk about the role of the WTO going forward as well, because that's also going to be extremely crucial. And also, are we going to see more FTAs going forward, really, as far as trade is concerned?
Well, Frank, thank you very much. And I fully agree with the previous two speakers, whatever points they have made. Yes, actually, because of this COVID impact, the whole of the global economic system is going through a churn. And which way it will eventually go is very difficult to predict at this. What we are doing is we are going by month. As say that within the next few months, they are saying there will be a next wave of a mutated coronavirus that is likely to come back. So if the pattern is going to be the lockdowns and stopping the supply chains and the economic activity, then we are looking for a very long haul. Now, in that scenario, it will be very difficult to predict which industry will come out. Of course, as we have seen that essential services, some of the pharma services, but a lot of our industries are dependent on supplies from China. And I know that their list has been circulating around that there are 1,000 multinationals that are trying to move out of China to different countries and all. Last time when it happened after 2008 and some other trade war between China and the US, we have seen that the companies have moved, and as was rightly mentioned, they moved to ASEAN essentially, mainly Vietnam. Because what happens is that even though a lot of countries are democratic in their governance, in their economic structure, they prefer some kind of a fast-track mechanism that they find being delivered by these countries like Vietnam, like Thailand, where the FDI rules, the FII rules are pretty much clear and straightforward, implementable. And that is one thing which is extremely important. So our economy mainly is while the manufacturing and the agriculture employs the largest number of people, the biggest contribution comes from the services sector. Now the services sector, 65-70% of the total GDP. Now that is totally dependent on what happens in the US and the West, which are not going to recover from this as far as the various estimates are concerned. Their economies are going to go into recession and in the red for a long time. So we are looking at a downturn, which is clearly today's report you must have seen of Moody's, which says that Indian economy might go down to 0.2%. And now, as far as the role of WTO is concerned, we have seen that the Americans are not happy about WTO at all and its functioning. They are not happy about the functioning of any international organization for that matter. But the WTO particularly, they have not allowed. And WTO, what does it have? The only thing that it does very effectively is this dispute settlement mechanism. Now they are not even judges there. They have not allowed, the Americans have not allowed appointment of judges. So this body is there, yet very much, as long as there's a problem between the minor economies, they are able to take some decision and implement it. In the other countries, it doesn't work out that way. So I think that not only WTO, but WHO and the UNCTAD and the other organizations will come in for a spin. And we are looking probably for greater reforms in these also. But India has to be prepared. We have to first strengthen our own internal system. And in the graded fashion, the various industries will probably be opened up and they might go. We have to see the low-hanging fruit. That is what the Indian industry needs to work. And adequate financial provisions have to be provided for the industry to regain. It's a basic starting point. So that's what I look at. This virus is not going anywhere. It's going to stay for a long time.
Okay, all right. All right, Ambassador, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. You heard both the other panelists. Let's now talk about another aspect altogether, the role of the WTO going forward, how important it's going to be, and also, are we going to see FTAs now coming to the fore yet again?
Well, I fully agree with what the previous two speakers have said in their respective domain. But as we all know, that the economic costs of this global downturn are still accelerating. So it is extremely difficult how it is going to play out. And there is a global downturn recession which is taking place. And you must have seen today's report by Moody, which says that the Indian economy is going to grow by about 0.2%. And the rest of the other economies are going to go down further. Now, there is a move from China. Let's say we have heard about 1,000 odd companies that are planning to move out of there because of the incentives given by some governments, especially US and Japan. Now those incentives are essentially provided for those companies to go back. And as you know, the US has always played this ever since President Trump has come, America First policy. So they want and in view of the elections, forthcoming elections, they want all these companies to come back so that there is a greater employment and other things. He has recently changed the immigration laws also. So we know that restriction, the gated globalization, as Samir Saran and some others said, will become a reality. And that is what the WTO and other agencies try to deal with. But what we have seen in the past, that the World Trade Organization has really not been able to deliver enough, because one single country like the United States of America, which used to be a champion of the liberal world order, has taken two protectionist measures. So in everything, whether it is our handicraft, whether it's textiles, whether fruits and vegetables, in these biggest markets, there is a very major challenge to go in. And so is the services sector, in which India depends very heavily on the Western markets. So there is going to be, now you have seen just the H1B visas and the immigration control that have been announced for 60 days that are likely to be extended further. So all these movement of persons and professionals are going to impinge on the global trade and our trade with the global entities, especially the big partners. Now, China is in the dock at the moment, but China is the biggest economy with the greatest resilience and the cash reserves. So it'll come out. And what people are saying that the companies are moving as a mass exit, I don't think the multinationals work that way. They want to have eggs in all baskets. So far, they have gone to China, and Chinese economy has prospered and provided them the platform that they needed to compete in the world. Whereas, so they go to Vietnam, which has a very kind of a control system that delivers for the industry on a platter. In India, we are, in the doing business with India, we are at the, I think, 63rd rank or something like that. Now that means the 62 other economies are faring a little better and providing us a competition. We have a huge market. But then today in a globalized world, which is under tremendous pressure for a deglobalization, I think the current multilateral institutions under tremendous strain. They are very much needed. They need to be strengthened. If the biggest economy does not support that, biggest economy is going to undermine that, and China is taking the advantage, I do not foresee that these institutions are going to provide any greater comfort to the global trade, at least in the near term.
Okay, all right. All right, Professor, let me now come to you. Let's now talk about another aspect as well. Will we see a focus now back on tariffs once again, and can we expect some kind of cooperation on this front?
Yeah, before I go to that question, I just want to respond to one of the points which has been made earlier. I do not think that India should worry too much about the growth projections made by rating agencies. You should see a good amount of research done at the IMF, and IMF has predicted that India will grow around 2%. My own scenario analysis, I've said it should grow around 3%. Dr. Arvind Virmani, former chief economic advisor with his working paper at eGrow Foundation, says it should grow between 2 and 3%. And I also feel that if we take this lockdown period as front loading of the vacations and holidays, there's a lean period as far as the economy is concerned, and we are able to compensate and recoup by offering 6 days, 7 day a week when we open up, we should be able to recover the economy. So I would not give much credence to the rating agencies making us grow at such low percentage. The second point which my colleague here made, Mr. Bothra, I think it's a good time we should attract multinationals into India with automation and the artificial intelligence becoming very important. Most of the jobs which have been done by manpower are going to vanish. These MNCs are going to find our handicrafts extremely, extremely good, and the markets, the global markets are going to just come and take those things. So therefore, I would think that the multinationals should be attracted tremendously by the government, as other countries do with the multinationals. The Vietnam, Mexico, Bangladesh, Estonia, they offer free land, they give tax holidays, they give long tax concessions. We should be able to attract multinationals. Is about 1 million foreign companies operate in China. Just 1,000 moving out is not sufficient. We have virgin Northeast, we have industrial hubs like Gujarat and Maharashtra, we have beautiful areas in Bihar and Jharkhand where mines are there. So we should be able to attract in much larger number the multinationals. The question which you raised on tariffs. Now, as I understand, there is going to be, we have already seen the tariff war that started between America and China, but the whole global scenario has changed after COVID-19. Protectionism is going to increase. So my gut feeling is supply lines within the countries and trying to keep the population, local population engaged, they will have to have these barriers come up. So as part of protectionism, tariff wars, there's a possibility will increase. According to me, this is little worrisome. But if you have to look at the benefits of global trade believes in free movement of labor, free movement of goods, free movement of services, and free movement of capital. In any case, India is a destination, given its democratic values, given its friendliness, and given its skilled manpower. I think the capital, which is going to be sitting redundant in most of the times after post-COVID, will find way into India. The last point I want to make is, whenever there is unconventional monetary policy, which means easing of monetary policy, which the economy is flushed with money, where will the money go? In the last experience also, read the speeches by the Reserve Bank. After the 2008 crisis, most of the money started coming, FI money started coming into India, and the emerging country, which is very promising, which has very good regulators, which has stock markets, this is the place where money will again come in. So yes, capital will be pretty abundant in our country, and I think we are poised for it.
Okay, all right. So Naresh Bothra, as far as some policies are concerned, what do you believe needs to be done? For instance, last month, the government extended the foreign trade policy for another year. Is that going to be helpful really as far as our exports and our traders are concerned? What else can be done at the policy level, do you think?
Yes, that is certainly a good thing that government has announced, since at this stage they could not reinvent the policy changes, and the 5-year trade policy they extended the same by 1 year has really held. We will continue with the same format that we were existing with, or where we left in March. So that will help us in the same manner. With the new changes that were coming in, probably we were getting a cut on the incentive that were being provided by the government. MEIS, that was one of the benefits which was being available to us, was supposed to be replaced by RODTAP, but that is now postponed by a year. Eventually, as the industry will be suffering and more, since the global communities and companies will be moving around different nations, we have to see our competition very strongly, and we have to see how we can be safeguarded and be better in terms of pricing, because I see a lot of industries which will face a lot of pricing competition from Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. And then we have to be very, very competitive at the same time. It will surely depend on the government policies, how they cater to us and how they make us live better. So they have to, and secondly, other than the policy, they have to create that environment where the companies or the nations, when they are willing for the new destination, they come to India. India needs to hammer again and again that we are a better country for them for the future, will be a better opportunity for them in comparison to our competitors, and that is where we will win.
Okay, all right, Ambassador, as far as this whole issue is concerned, there's no doubt that some of the developing countries are going to be worst hit. And as the world goes into protectionism, the effects are going to be felt more so there than anywhere else. So at that, from that perspective, can the G20 countries come together and try to, put on a brave face, and what can they do to tide over this crisis?
Frank, the good thing was that Prime Minister Modi, in fact, initiated his digital diplomacy first to SAARC and then to G20, trying to push for this kind of a global response, because the G20 economies are represent more than 85% of the global GDP. But let us not forget that in G20, it's like the P5. In the G20, you have China, you have US, you have all the countries that have been undermining the liberal global trading system. And so therefore, in that context, you can't see much. At the moment, everybody is worried because they are fighting against a virus. And whether it is Chinese virus or coronavirus, that is something for the US to decide. But at the same time, the whole global community is currently wanting somehow to find that critical threshold from where they can restart their economic activities. Now the tariffs have been all the markets. Essentially, as you know, that as the recent announcements of, like it's been mentioned also, that the travel and tourism, the visas that have been put on hold. All visas have been cancelled virtually until such time that they are revived. There are immigration controls. So all these things go into the enhancing the economic activity globally. But we are seeing more and more protectionism. It is not with the COVID alone. It has been happening for quite some time. And the countries have to come together in the G20 forum, in the UN, in everywhere, whichever forum is possible, and bilaterally and multilaterally. We have to come together.
Okay, time now to get closing comments on the program with the best way forward. Starting first with you, Mr. Botra, what's the best way forward?
Yeah, certainly the government has to re-look into the policies as to what they need to do in the future to make our economy reviving and growing. Secondly, they have to see the global companies walking into India and give them better environments and better understanding of what our country is for them for the future. Thirdly, as of now, also, I believe the Modi government has been working with different task forces, different areas and sectors as well. They've been very proactively working. I've been in touch with a lot of forums and platforms through our MPs, ministers, and a lot of people, and gladly they are doing much better. And I believe if they work a little more concentrated with a specific agenda, they'll be able to do much better for the country.
Okay, all right, Ambassador.
Well, number one is we should have a solid exit plan out of this COVID lockdown for the industry in graded form or staggered manner. And all the incentives that the government has announced must reach quickly to the industries. Especially, we have 63 million SMEs that are going to be wiped out, and they contribute a great deal to the economy as it is. As far as the external market is concerned, I think the foreign minister has already charged all our ambassadors for opportunities in whatever field. So as soon as our economy comes on steam, we should be able to secure the markets that are available to us, and that is the job that has been assigned to all our diplomatic missions. It's going to be a difficult task as the global governance is under siege for the moment. And I think the gated globalization, as being mentioned, is in progress. So we need to work against it so that countries like India, especially in the international domain, and to attract greater companies, need to address the problems that we have in our economy as to why we have not been able to compete effectively. Those have to be addressed, whether it's labor reforms, whether it's financial sector reforms, or whether it's the FDI reforms.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. But what's coming out of this discussion is that there are certain sectors that are going to be impacted far more than the others. They really need to work hard to ensure that we come out of this. At some level, the government too needs to make some policy changes if it has to help our industry, is what the panelists are suggesting. And the world is going to go into